Hola, minasan! Welcome back for another round of MechWarrior BattleTech research. It's viewer recommended time. VicRoll65, a fan of the show, once more, recommended the Black Watch. Dying is for other people from PacreasNoWork. It's been a while since I've been to PacreasNoWork, and we're gonna see what dying is for other people is about. The Black Watch. That's actually sounds like the Night Watch. I wonder if they were blocking a wall. An ice wall in space. That'll be pretty cool if it's a giant ice wall in space. Who knows? Who knows? Just taking a little sidestep from the clans, because I've been covering all the clans a lot lately. So I figured let me take a little break and check out other places of BattleTech. Hopefully, for those of you who are curious, I'll be able to get my hands on a copy of the BattleTech tabletop game. Just let me know what the latest edition is in the comments below, so that way I can keep an eye out for it if it's cost efficient too. So I can maybe do an unboxing or something. Who knows? Who knows? So get your notes together for my post research thoughts. This is a call to action. Comment, like, subscribe, follow, hit the notification button, and let us begin the research. You'll find links to PacreasNoWork and Dying is for Other People, the Black Watch, down in the description below.
Generally speaking, in fiction, it's quite common to see the bodyguards of someone important not only be weaker than them, but generally bad at their jobs. In the end, they'll fail to protect the important guy, though to be fair, not necessarily for lack of trying. Like the Custodes. Remember how well they protected the Emperor? They protected him so good that he died as much as someone like him can. Quite frequently, in fact, bodyguards don't even put a good showing of things. I know he ordered them out, but remember Palpatine's dope-looking guards in Return of the Jedi? They didn't fight, they didn't even storm in to protect the Emperor when things got screamy and lightningy. They just left and Palpatine got tossed down a tube. Sure, in both the EU and Disney canons he came back, but it hardly looks good for their record. Sometimes you should ignore your boss and come see if things are actually alright. And then we have the Royal Black Watch of House Cameron. On paper, they didn't break the mold much. To give you some spoilers, they failed to protect Richard Cameron from Fat Genghis Khan, and his coup of the Star League was successful. At least until an angry Russian beat the hell out of him for over 10 years straight. But once you scratch the surface, you'll see that the Royal Black Watch was quite frankly the best bunch of bodyguards you could ask for in all of fiction. Let's take a look, shall we? The Royal Black Watch actually has its history in our own real world. BattleTech has a lot of things like that. Did you know that General Motors invented the first fusion power plant in 2020? Isn't that retroactively really funny? The Black Watch, at least for now, doesn't really need any reality checks like General Motors apparently does, because in BattleTech lore, they weren't really doing anything until about 350 years into the future. Their real-world history is actually pretty interesting, having served all the way back from the 1700s to modern times. And if the British Army was deployed somewhere, the Black Watch wasn't far behind. To keep this from becoming a propaganda video for a country I don't even live in, I'm going to stop the history lesson there and direct you to Wikipedia for more information on the current Black Watch. In BattleTech, the Black Watch have been doing its thing for quite some time, being a Royal Regiment of Scotland, when the Star League was formed in the year 2571. It was, of course, necessary to put together a group of bodyguards to keep the ruling noble house of Star League safe, that being House Cameron. Evidently, the Black Watch decided that they were up to the task and became officially known as the Royal Black Watch Regiment. To bring them up to full strength and help make them even more good at what they would do, they would frequently recruit members from the best mech warriors of the
that's funny, the
Highlanders,
bagpipes.
themselves a mercenary unit who were also descended from the Scottish. In this universe, if you're about to enter combat and hear bagpipes, do yourself a favor and find anything else to do instead. You'll live longer. The Black Watch during this time would become the cream of the crop of the Star League's mech warriors, putting themselves through ruthless training to ensure that the ruler of pretty much all of humanity that mattered would never be endangered. There was this thing called the Gunslinger Program. Imagine the training Navy SEALs and the SAS members go through. Now put whatever image you have in your head on crack and have the end result require the trainee to be proficient in everything from fistfights to shootouts to beating the snot out of giant robots with another giant robot.
Please tell me the robots do that. Please tell me the Black Watch does that with their mechs. Flip upside down like that and flick an axe. That would be freaking hardcore epic. Oh man. August, why aren't you flipping over your opponent with your mech and flicking the axe?
Every Black Watch member was a graduate of this program, if not a highly proficient combatant already for those second-handed from the Northwind Highlanders, and it showed in their unrivaled combat prowess. This was of course highly necessary. Though during the Star League era, humanity was nominally at peace with itself, it had come to be ruled by feudal houses reminiscent of medieval times. To hugely simplify things, due to the massive distances between planets and FTL communication not being omnipresent early on, this ended up being how the future shaped itself in BattleTech.
Not pictured.
And the great houses certainly got up
House
to
of
some good
Africa.
old-fashioned medieval politics.
And House of South
i.e.
America.
marriage, warfare, and of course, assassination. The second to last First Lord of Star League, and yes, I know the title of First Lord makes talking about who came when an absolute pain in the ass, was indeed almost certainly murdered by a rival. If you're wondering how the Black Watch can possibly be as badass as I initially claimed them to be given all this, I'll get to it. Also, the guy I just mentioned was killed because someone sabotaged the industrial mech he was piloting at the time during a visit to some miners. Not really a problem you can fix by shooting at it, unless your method of defending your liege is obliterating the thing he's joyriding in. Now we get to the final First Lord of Star League, and soon the moment that would ensure the Black Watch would become a legend. To give you context so you understand what the hell was happening, my predominantly Warhammer-based audience, the son of the last guy, Richard II of House Cameron, inherited the throne at quite a young age due to his father's assassination. Growing up without any parental figures, his only real guiding hand was his regent, General Alexander Kerensky of Star League. And while Kerensky was a good man and stellar general, parenting evidently wasn't his thing. To be fair, he also had his duties as a general to take care of, so despite his best efforts, he couldn't always be there for Richard. Who was always there for Richard was a slimy bastard known as Stefan Amaris. Fat Genghis Khan has come to the stage, and just like Erebus, he is going to fucking ruin everything. Over the course of several years, he would get close to Richard, taking on whatever role he needed to be at the time to earn his trust. Be it a quote-unquote guiding hand, a yes man, a confidant, and most importantly for the lonely Richard, a friend. This was, of course, all total bullshit. Amaris' plan was to take Richard's place as the First Lord of Star League. Gaining Richard's trust, he would convince the First Lord of various different things to ensure his coup could take place without a hitch. He got him to remove all Star League defense forces from his home nation, the Rimworld Republic. When SLDF forces were engaged in combat elsewhere in the periphery and needed more and more troops, Amaris would generously allow him use of the Rimworld Republic military to garrison Terra and the rest of the Terran hegemony's planets to free up SLDF garrisons to go fight. And as a constant companion of Richard, who was gaining more and more of his trust, he was allowed to do pretty much whatever he wanted around the Imperial Palace. It got to a point that when he showed up to meet Richard with an entire entourage of bodyguards armed to the teeth, no one thought this was out of the ordinary. And before he took his bodyguards to Richard's palace, he had gotten one final preparation complete. He had once again sent his forces in to guard Terra, outnumbering the remaining SLDF forces on the planet by 2 to 1. With everything set in place, Amaris took his bodyguards to the throne room, gave Richard a jewel-encrusted laser pistol as a present, and then used it to shoot Richard right in the head before assuming control of Star League and renaming it the Amaris Empire. You can see it in this lovely picture on screen now. Richard's headless corpse is also present, but YouTube would probably demonetize me for showing a piece of art from a fictional universe because it's a bit violent. So I'm afraid you'll have to use your imagination to get the full picture. Or,
well, no.
Google images. Years and years of preparation, countless billions spent on military equipment and training, all led up to this moment. Amaris, for all his insanity and assholery, had executed Richard flawlessly. Of course, as he was soon to find out, the hard part was only just beginning, because now the Black Watch was about to enter the ring. The moment...
There we go. Oh, he made a little mistake there. Last stand of the Black Watch. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. You know, this has happened in human history as well. When you have weak kings and queens and end up getting manipulated by like a vizier or someone who coup d'etats, or another kingdom, you know, that plays them and end up getting absorbed or coup d'etat into oblivion. The fact that Mars just effectively blew Richard II's head off and took the throne is pretty freaking hilarious. Pretty gruesome because, of course, we didn't get to see his corpse laying on the ground of the throne room. You know, PacreasNoWork's joke just didn't fall in, unfortunately. Neither did mine. I think we both had something in common there. How unfortunate. Nevertheless, Richard II really ruled terribly and really allowed Amaris to get in. Now we got the Amaris Empire, the newly christened Amaris Empire. And poor Space Scotland, it's now under the ears of a weird man who's not even Scottish. Probably doesn't even play the bagpipes. Does not understand the art of the bagpipe. So now we're gonna find out what the Black Watch legitimately did. Now that we got the context here, it's about the Reconquista. I bet you. We're sorry for associating the Black Watch with Siege, but I felt it fitting. Also, Blitz best operator, funny man shield. Funny shield man. Well, I like to see more about that.
When Amaris fired his pistol that probably cost more to make than most people will see in their lives, the palace's alarms rang out. Suddenly, the Royal Black Watch was kicking into action. Their infantry began immediately storming the palace to reach the First Lord and turn Amaris into something more resembling a pulled pork sandwich than a human being.
Ooh.
Amaris had brought his best soldiers alongside him as protection, and they were only just barely able to keep him from getting vaporized by a group of soldiers who think a brick of C4 is the same thing as a frag grenade. His bodyguards were soldiers who had trained and drilled extensively for this exact scenario, and the moment the time came to throw down, the Black Watch were quick to inform them that their place in life was to be fertilizer. While Amaris was busy recoloring his pants brown and trying his best to stay out of the way of the murderous psychopaths intended on making him an unpleasant memory, the rest of the Black Watch was beginning to awaken at Fort Cameron, their home base. 9 mechs that were kept on standby immediately sallied out of the fort under the command of Colonel Hani Schmidt, while the rest of the Black Watch was busy preparing to enter combat, activating their own mechs and equipment and getting ready to turn this coup into a failed one. Tragically, Amaris' preparations had extended to them too, for he was of nothing else thorough. There were 2 things he knew with certainty about the Black Watch. He would have to fight them tooth and nail to succeed, and he really didn't want to do that. And so, as the rest of the Black Watch was about to enter combat, Amaris had a nuke dropped on top of their heads. Ignoring the infantry already storming the palace, active Black Watch combatants went from regimental strength to 9 mechs lucky enough to already be active and marching to battle. Amaris wasn't done yet either. All around Terra, the forces he brought were engaging the surprised and outnumbered garrisons in place. His finest forces, the 4th Amaris Dragoons, were beelining it towards their leader. A good thing too, because every second it took them was another second the Black Watch were getting closer and closer. The 9 remaining Black Watch positioned themselves at Puget Sound in the Gorst Flats, and as the night dragged on, prepared themselves for the fight against the Dragoons.
That's Seattle.
Here's a picture of Puget Sound, because it is a real-world location. The Black Watch chose their fighting grounds well. On the one hand, there was water, which you can't really walk a mech through, and on the other, there was forest. The Dragoons were forced to fight against the Black Watch head-on in a space that meant their vastly superior numbers meant very little. Nevertheless, to say the odds were against the defenders of House Cameron was an understatement. All the Dragoons had to do was wipe out the last 9 mechs standing between them and Amaris, and the coup would be assured. The Black Watch, meanwhile, had to face off against an enemy that vastly outnumbered them, who had preparing their lives for this exact moment to help their lord's psychotic delusions come to fruition, and who, quite frankly, hated everything the Black Watch stood for. It wasn't even a close fight. As infantry and things like tanks or helicopters poured in, they would immediately be cut down and stomped flat by the Black Watch. When the Dragoons brought their mechs to the field, the Black Watch would either be waiting for them the moment they cleared the tree line, or would fade away into the tree line as if they were never really there until the time was right and then jump the Dragoons the moment their guard was down. Take notice of the Black Watch paint scheme of this mech I found on Google Images, the most reliable of sources. Dark green with perhaps a bit of golden trim. Given that this battle took place in the dead of night, it's not unrealistic to assume that the last thing a few of Amaris' goons saw was the flash of a mech's main gun before they came down with a terrible case of explosions. That disease, to complete the Team 4-star reference, was highly infectious. Entire companies of the Dragoons were wiped to the last man, others reduced to uselessness even if a couple of them managed to bug out. Every time they would manage to land a hit on the Black Watch, it was like their ammo had been replaced with Nerf darts, and they would return fire with much greater effect. Years of training specifically to fight the Black Watch proved beyond useless. Hani Schmidt and her 8 soldiers fought like they were possessed, giving no quarter and taking no prisoners. As I said earlier, terrain helped beyond forcing a close quarters engagement. It rendered the massive numerical superiority of Amaris' forces near useless, as they couldn't bring their full might to bear against the Black Watch. And while elsewhere on the planet SLDF forces were falling, it was here that the fighting mattered most, and they could not break through. As for why they couldn't just go around, for one, that would mean wasting valuable time that Amaris didn't have. 2, that would mean they would lose the momentum against the Black Watch, who would be free to engage them at their own pace, not just having to react to the Dragoons' forces coming to kill them. Things were getting beyond desperate for Amaris.
Yeah, if you look at the map, if you gotta walk around that whole sound, it's very big. That whole region is really, really large, and not only that, but you need fuel, and Amaris doesn't have fuel to spare. Clearly, the supply line is clearly not very good. And on top of that, the Black Watch knows the terrain better than Amaris. That they're able to be like ninjas and disappear in the line of sight of the dense trees around Puget Sound. The whole Seattle area is pretty dense with all these mini micro islands, all these mini islands and such, and peninsulas. So it's not really, and also the mountains. Mount Rainier is not too far from Seattle. I can tell you that. Hence all the earthquakes. So yeah, Amaris really didn't have much an advantage over Blackwatch, and Blackwatch, mind you, is doing guerrilla tactics. They're really doing guerrilla tactics more so than anything else, and that's very difficult to do, to take on guerrillas that have who are very well versed in the terrain and such. Your chances of winning is still there. But when dealing with guerrillas, you gotta be able to understand how they operate in the terrain and such. And clearly, Amars is not doing that, because he should have taken them down. They only had 9 mechs on the Blackwatch side, and Blackwatch is definitely getting some wins along the way.
To react to the Dragoons' forces coming to kill them. Things were getting beyond desperate for Amaris. The Blackwatch Marines fighting his bodyguards were getting closer and closer to him, and it didn't look like they were going to take him into custody in anything but a body bag. Despite the Blackwatch losing a few mechs of their own, the Dragoons' losses were far greater, and blowing the gun off a Blackwatch mech just meant it was going to come and beat you to death with your own leg after it ripped it off. The colonel in charge of the Dragoons was getting similarly desperate. From his point of view, they had nuked the home of where these demons were all supposed to be, and then 9 of them survived to hand their asses to them on a silver platter. Some ways left no survivors, save for the Blackwatch waiting for the next to come. Entire companies were turned to ash as every attack was repulsed. With the approval of Amaris, the commander decided to end things the only way he thought would work. What was left of the Dragoon forces surrounded the Blackwatch as the closest thing they could get to a safe distance, throwing every single piece of ordnance they had, and by sheer weight of manpower keeping the Blackwatch from moving. This still wasn't working, but it wasn't supposed to. Fighters flying overhead dropped 2 nuclear weapons on top of the Blackwatch and their own soldiers, blowing everything in the flats to keep them calm. It's worth noting that when this happened, there were still 5 Blackwatch mechs returning fire at the surrounding forces. Even after fighting against the enemy's elite force, after dozens of mechs, hundreds of other vehicles, and thousands of infantrymen threw themselves at the Blackwatch, they had managed to destroy a grand total of 4 out of 9 Blackwatch mechs over the course of the battle. The tattered remnants of the Dragoons marched their way to the palace, where Amaris was moments away from having his head ripped off, eliminating the Blackwatch Marines storming the palace and saving Amaris just barely. All that remained of those 9 brave soldiers in the flats was the hand of a Highlander mech. It isn't officially stated anywhere that it was found flipping the bird at the Dragoons, but I like to believe it was.
Yeah.
According to the history most people in the setting would be familiar with, this was the end of the Royal Blackwatch Regiment. Face-tanking nuclear bombs and refusing to die no matter the odds up until the very end.
That's hardcore.
But, I mean, come on. Haven't you been listening? Nukes didn't do the Blackwatch in the first time around. What makes you think this time would be any different? As it turns out, not all of the Blackwatch was present that fateful day. One Elizabeth Hazen was visiting her brother who had been injured in a fighter crash when Amaris and company threw their little coup. Managing to escape the hospital before it was bombed, she and several other SLDF forces formed the Ghosts of the Blackwatch, a resistant movement that would give Amaris hell for the rest of his life. Joining them was one Colleen Schmidt, the granddaughter of the same Honey Schmidt who nearly sent the 4th Dragoons to hell in a handbasket on the Gorst Flats. I know there's no bloodline magic in this setting, ignoring whatever garbage the clanners seem to think, but it seems that once your family gets into the Blackwatch, badass runs in it for all time. For a decade they would play merry hell with Amaris' occupation forces. Amaris would keep sending assassins after them, which translates to Amaris kept losing assassins to them. And when General Kerensky finally managed to fight his way back to Terra with the rest of the SLDF forces, these two met up with him after he had fought his way to where they were. They gave him every bit of intelligence he could possibly need about the situation on Terra, and in return they only asked to be allowed to take the fight to Amaris one last time. Kerensky allowed them to do so, and one last time did the Blackwatch cause Amaris to reconsider not wearing dark khaki pants. After Kerensky executed Amaris, these two women followed him alongside most of the remaining Star League defense force to the deep periphery, where they and their descendants would eventually come to form the clans. As for the Blackwatch itself, its story doesn't quite end there. The regiment proper does, but its memory would live on. The Northwind Highlanders would go on to recover the hand of the Highlander that survived the battle, holding it as an almost sacred relic. In time, they would also form a secret company of soldiers dubbed as what else but the Blackwatch. It would come to be tested when the Second Star League formed in response to the clan invasion. They decided to prove themselves before offering their services as the new defenders of the First Lord, and fought a bloody battle against Clan Smoke Jaguar after revealing themselves to an expeditionary force heading towards the Jaguar's homeworld. Wearing the insignia of the old regiment, Smoke Jaguar forces were enraged at what they saw as brazen disrespect for the now legendary Black Watch of old. Which is funny, because neither Colleen Schmidt nor Elizabeth Hazen founded that clan, but Smoke Jaguar is dedicated to nothing if not being the biggest bunch of assholes in the setting, short of those guys who thought Jerome Blake's word involved nuking half the Inner Sphere. The new Black Watch survived the battle with only 2 or 3 mechs intact, but returned the Inner Sphere to rebuild anew and become the new Royal Guards of the First Lord. Perhaps not as glorious a performance as the original Black Watch, but if nothing else, they proved they were just as ready to take to the field. Then the Blakist Jihad happened. Reportedly, the Black Watch was destroyed as once more the Star League came under assault, but by this point I'm sure you know how this song and dance goes. Survivors would go on to rescue the son of House Kurita's ruler from a Blakist prison camp, and would fittingly rename themselves as the Ghosts of the Black Watch in honor of what once was. Hunted by word of Blake forces, they would suffer losses in every encounter they faced, but as is fitting to tradition, they simply refused to die.
That's actually impressive lore here. You know, it's not so much the people of the group, it's the name. The name carries with it weight, history, and iconography. It makes a lot of sense with the direction they went with this in the story, and I like it. I love this. You know, there's nothing more awesome than a mantle, than a carried mantle throughout the generations. And for the lore meisters to maintain that in BattleTech is and keep it consistent. As he said, it's the same old dance. You know, the Black Watch gets decimated, a new generation takes the mantle, they carry on the legacy, and it goes over and over and over again. And that's actually that's not easy to do in writing. And I find that to be very impressive that they were able to consistently do that with different characters and so on. Considering how many years the lore goes with the Black Watch, this is actually pretty cool. It doesn't really matter who it is that's in control of the Black Watch. It's the name that means something, and how the people respond to that name.
Information I could find in the last battle they partook in shows them walking into a trap and escaping at the cost of the life of one Lauren Jaffray, their commander. Because even after over 400 years, the Black Watch is too angry, too skilled, and most importantly, too goddamn stubborn to die. Now, their history is over, but if you'll let me, there's a couple thoughts of my own I'd like to give. I don't think the Star League Civil War would have turned out differently had the Black Watch been entirely eliminated at the start, at least in its ultimate outcome. I'm sure Kerensky would have dick-slapped Amaris into a well-deserved grave either way. To say otherwise is insulting to the man. But without their last stand, I propose that perhaps things could have turned out much, much differently. Amaris' 4th Dragoons were some of the best, if not the very best, he had ever had, and the Black Watch made them look like children playing soldier. Without their intervention, the Dragoons would have at most faced whatever outnumbered and outgunned Assodia forces remained after they had rescued them from the Black Watch Marines at the Cameron Palace. The Northwind Highlanders may not have formed their own Black Watch had things turned out differently, not taking the fight to the clans and defending the 2nd Star League as it did because the unit they had helped fill in old times couldn't even get out of their home base when it was most needed. And most importantly, without the thrashing they gave Amaris' goons, Terra could have been much more well defended with these highly trained soldiers still being around. It would have still fallen, but I believe that cost would be immeasurably higher. And if this is the case, when Kerensky took his soldiers away from the Inner Sphere to eventually form the clans, perhaps things would have turned out far different than they did. Maybe with less forces arriving in the deep periphery due to increased combat
That's an interesting
losses,
alternate
the clans would have had a
history
much harder
plot.
time forming and wouldn't be able to invade the Inner Sphere until much later, if at all. Or maybe they would have been able to unify easier as a simple result of there being less people to fight amongst themselves in their early history. Or maybe, just maybe, the clan's history would be vastly different. Having seen worse combat than they did in the canon timeline, perhaps the clans would have a new outlook on life, throwing away warfare and old loyalties entirely as a result of the horrors they saw on a vastly more well-defended Terra. This is, of course, all just food for thought. Maybe nothing would change, and I'm talking entirely out of my ass. Trying to imagine a timeline where the clans never invade, and Comstar doesn't have to put them in their place at Tukayed and can keep merrily blowing up old warships.
Yeah, we're going into alternate,
and as for my claim that they're perhaps the best
here,
bodyguards in
not
fiction,
really interested.
allow me to backtrack just a bit. They may not be able to protect you. Some weasel can sabotage your mech, or poison your drink, or whatever crap you can imagine, and there's only so much they can do about that. They aren't wizards. But on the field of battle, there's no one else who would want keeping you safe. And even if they can't keep you alive, you can rest easy knowing they're going to make sure to send as many people as they possibly can to apologize to you personally in the afterlife. And thus ends my telling of the legendary Black Watch. While I was able to hold myself back for most of the video from making any intentional references, there's one last thing you should know about these people. In the words of Tex of the Black Pants Legion, to the Black Watch, nukes are merely inconvenient. Thank you for watching, and beyond that, thank you for getting me to 100k subscribers.
That's a good way to put it.
I don't really know how to say thank you in a way that's meaningful. You've all given me a lot of stability in my life, a job, and a way of earning income. And most importantly, something that helped me keep going at a time where I had no idea what the hell I was going to do with myself in life. The support you've given for everything from videos to branching out into other topics like Halo and now BattleTech to supporting me when I have a sponsor segment in videos has been unbelievable. And I can't say thank you enough. If that was a bit too sappy for you, the shit posting in my Discord and streams has always been good for a laugh.
Aye, pour one for the wee lads. They had done great and took a nuke to the face. I am very proud of the boys. They did a good job. Yeah, Blackwatch is pretty cool, but what's cool, as I said before, it's the mantle, the name that actually carries the lore, and and once again, like I said, for writing and making the mantle be the character itself, the name is the character in and of itself, because it's how the other characters externally from your main group, so reputation, legends and such. A good example I could give, a good example that I could give is Inglourious Bastards from Quentin Tarantino, not the original Inglourious Bastards, but Quentin Tarantino's version of Inglourious Bastards, where at the end Hans Landa, they had a little brief talk with Aldo and Rain about being given these legendary names, the Apache, and the Little Man, and and it's a very interesting take that Quentin Tarantino decided to throw in at the end, with the little names there. But I get where he was coming from, and where Quentin Tarantino was going with it, and that was the fact that in storytelling, you want to have, if you have like an adventure, if you're going to talk about, have characters speak of legacy, you got to let the name have a lot of weight to it, have a legacy behind it, not just the lore, but have the characters who speak the name be, express what their thoughts are, their opinions. Some of them, you can have some say, oh, they stink and everything, or you can have others that say that they're great, and both sides can coexist. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. Both sides can coexist. One could say the Black Watch is the most epic group ever, while another house would be like, oh, those Scottish fools. I'm glad they got nuked in the face. If you are able to pull off writing like that, your fans will really love those characters and will wear them on their sleeves heavily, and they'll definitely will compile all the lore and everything, like we see here with the Black Watch. PacreasNoWork was able to compile all that legacy that was written in the literatures and lore from the lore meisters, and was able to compile this really fun video about the Black Watch, and gave us a good summary of who they were throughout the years. 400 years, and they go all the way back to the First World War, to World War I, which again, like before, I find it amazing how like Space Sweden, Rosenwald. Somebody's gonna scream and say, "You got it wrong." Rosenhog. I said Rosenwald. I put the B in that. Rosenhog being its origins of Sweden. Again, I really like that the BattleTech does implement our current, real world past, and then turn it into a sci-fi future. Use that as a backdrop to a sci-fi future. Star Trek did that. They did that pretty well. With the past. Sure, they did some fictional past, like Benjamin Bell. But and of course the eugenics war, which had to get really fixed up and everything since 1960 Star Trek, the original series, thought that 1994 was going to be hyper futuristic. was gonna be very, very hyper futuristic with robots and such. You know, that's how people always thought back in the past. They always thought that the 1990s was going to be space exploration and all that. Pretty funny, but nevertheless, the Black Watch is really epic. I mean, they took nukes in the face, and the fact that that Amaris chose to go nukes, what a coward. What a great way to show a cowardly character. Not only did he manipulate easily naive young Richard II to take the throne, but then he goes and drops nukes on Scotland, and the Scottish was like, get the bagpipes and begin to blow them away. And blow them away they did, because Amaris had a hard time all around Puget Sound, that's for sure. He couldn't handle Seattle. He couldn't handle the cold, wet rains of Seattle and the dense forests and mountainous earthquakes that comes out of Mount Rainier, Mount Olympia, and Mount Rainier. Is Mount Rainier there? No, I think I got my geography wrong. Someone's gonna be like, Mount Rainier's not there. Mount Olympia. Point is, Amara sucked. They sucked. They couldn't even take down 9 mechs. He couldn't even nuke 9 mechs. He just nuked 4 out of the 9. Yeah. Overall, this was a very well written team. This was again another nice look at how you can diversify your writing by not carrying the characters in and of itself, but by carrying the name, the mantle, the title, and have it mean something. Adds to a mythos. You create a mythos within your story, and having a mythos in your story really gives your readers, your viewers, a lot of great flavor to work with. Give them their favorite characters, their favorite favorite stuff, basically. You understand what I'm saying? You generate favorites when you can be able to do something like that. This is a good thing to note for my own works, for my work, Trucker No Bouken, in terms of legacies and how mantles are carried through the years. It's been crossing my mind, processing through my mind, and so these pieces of information is giving a lot more help, So yeah, PacreasNoWork, again, links down in the description below. Big thanks to VicRule65 for recommending this video. That's it for the research today, for today's research. So head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book down below in this description, along with links to other merch such as pin stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to have a copy of The Impossible Man and did a lore video on it, thank you very much, YouTuber. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And if you happen to have, if you're interested, you can join me on my live multi-stream, Twitch and Kick, Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I do lore research, Japanese cultural studies, gaming, and more. I look forward to hanging out with you. So until the next round of MechWarrior BattleTech research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night, a buenas noches, and oisumi nasai.